Kia ora koutou katoa, nau mai haramai ki te ao Hākinakina, your sports show right here on your Tribal Pulse, Te Kori Mako o Taranaki, 94.8 FM and 98.4 FM. Well, he's a basketballing legend who hails from this part of the world, whānau. He is a 9-time New Zealand NBL champion and a 4-time Australian NBL champion. He has represented his nation and the Tall Blacks at the highest level and continues to serve the game and his community by currently holding the role as CEO of New Zealand Basketball. No mai haramai to local basketball legend Dillon Boucher. Kia ora, bro.
Kia ora, bro. How are you?
Not too bad, brother. Hey, good to see you, man, and thanks for coming on the show. Really excited to have a kōrero with you. Hey, but before we start, ko waikoe no hekwe, just a bit about yourself and where you're from.
Kia ora. So, ko Taranaki te Maunga, ko Waifakahe te Awa, no Taranaki ahau, ko Boucher toko whānau, ko Dillon toko ingoa. So my name's Dillon Boucher. As you introduced me, I'm the Chief Executive of Basketball New Zealand, and I've actually just taken over a new role to become President of Basketball Operations at the BNZ Breakers. So I grew up in Bell Block, just on Henwood Road in Bell Block. Went to Bell Block Primary School and then spent 1 year going to Spotswood College. And then my whānau moved to Auckland and I moved to Papatoetoe. So I went to Papatoetoe High School, and then later on I've since then moved to the North Shore with my whānau, my beautiful wife and 4 kids. And we live over in Albany on the North Shore now. So that's me in a snapshot.
Awesome, eh? BBK, Bell Block, Spotswood College. Oh, we know those places very well. Tell us a little bit about your childhood here in New Plymouth and Ngāmotu and the memories you have of a young fella in this neck of the woods.
Yeah, man, I had an awesome childhood. I've got 2 older brothers, so I was the youngest of 3. And like I say, grew up in Bell Block and played every sport going. You know, any sport that was available, we played, and everything from, rugby, football, cricket, badminton, tennis, you name it, we got involved in it. And BMXing actually was my love when I started out when I was about 5, and rode bikes till I was probably about 12, I think. And then when moved to Auckland, it kind of faded away a little bit, but loved BMXing, loved being on the Bell Block BMX track and the New Plymouth BMX track. And what I loved was going away with my family, and we competed in meets and so forth around the country, but just going away in the backseat of the car, getting car sick, and and having bacon and egg pie and sausage rolls. That was all part of it. Loved it. Loved my childhood.
Oh, you mentioned the Bell Block BMX track. Now, I remember that track. It was next to the main road. It's no longer there anymore, but it was a good little track there. Now, speaking of BMX, I remember you well. I was a bit younger than you, but you're someone I looked up to. Now, you were a 3-time North Island champion, and you even beat a famous ex-All Black in your younger years. I think it was Carlos Spencer. So you mentioned the BMX journey. How cool. I remember that journey well, and the awesome camaraderie and whanaungatanga that all those BMX families had, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of it, right? It was part of your whānau. Everyone got involved, and you had your days where everyone would tidy up the track and do the weeding and the gardening, and it really felt like and I still have friends to this day that we were involved around the track with, and I loved it. It was again time with your whānau to just compete, but also you had a family outside of your family, and so for me that was really cool. And like you say, got to race against some cool people, and myself and Carlos Spencer had a few races against each other, and in our younger years. And he was, funnily enough, he was way bigger than me back then when we were kids, and I grew a little bit taller than him in the end, but just had some fun times traveling around the country, racing, and had some good success as well. And again, something that myself and my 2 older brothers loved.
Nice, awesome. Now, that transition, you obviously went from Bell Block to Spotswood College. What was the transition like? Obviously, leaving little old New Plymouth and heading up to Auckland would have been a big change for you?
Yeah, it was a massive change for me. I left New Plymouth with a mullet and got to Auckland and no one had a mullet, so I didn't know what was going on. But it was a culture shock too, and obviously there's a big Polynesian and Māori population in South Auckland, and I'd obviously... we had Māoris at school and things like that, but I hadn't seen many Polynesians, a couple, but the school was very, had a lot of Polynesians, and I hadn't seen that many. And I got involved in rugby and basketball at the school, and some of my best mates were Samoan and Tongan and Cook Island. So I really enjoyed that diverse culture that we immersed ourselves in. And when we moved to Auckland. It was a culture shock to start with, but one thing that brings people together is sport. So I knew the one thing I needed to do at the school was play sport, and that's where all my friendships developed through sport. And had some fun playing, high school sport, and I ended up falling in love with basketball probably at that kind of high school age.
Now I understand your when you kind of started following that basketball journey, you got selected for a junior New Zealand side. Was it kind of at that point you started to realise, actually, I could give this a good go here?
Yeah, it was funny, my first journey into the New Zealand team was not a traditional one. So that was back in the days they would have a trial and they'd name trialists. And anyway, so they named trialists and my name wasn't on the list. And so my high school coach rang the coach and said, "Oh, I've got this kid you need to look at." So he goes, "Oh, okay, let me do a bit of homework on this kid and ask a few people about him." And I just happened to be playing in a 3x3 competition on the weekend, and the coach happened to be there, and we won the comp. And he saw me play, and then he said to my coach, "Oh, yeah, tell him to come along to the trial." So I went along to the trial, and his name was Tab Baldwin, who ended up being the Tall Blacks coach in the end, but he was the junior Tall Blacks coach at the time, but also coached Auckland. So I went along to that trial, and not only did I make the team, I ended up being captain of the team, and also got invited to play for Auckland. So it was in a 2-day trial that lasted a weekend. I came out of it, feeling pretty chuffed that I'd made the team, but also that I'd also made the Auckland team at the same time as a 17, 18-year-old. So that was kind of where I firmly realized that, hey man, I could do this for a career. I could become a pro basketball player.
Well, and you sure did do that, because between 1994 and 2018, you spent years plying your trade in both the New Zealand and Australian competitions, with a stellar career of 13 combined career championships, which is the most I understand anyone's done between the two competitions. So there must be some amazing memories and friendships that have been created over that time.
Man, I've been lucky to play with some amazing people, some amazing players, amazing coaches, support staff. Friendships that'll last forever. And those are the moments you cherish. And probably when I stepped away from the game a few years ago now, I really missed that competing. Going to war with your brothers and stepping on the court and trying to win games and coming up with game plans to be able to win games. I really miss that competitive nature, and I still run around a little bit with some of my good mates that I played with back in the day. But to be honest, it's not so much the competing now. It's a little bit of the competing, but it's also the camaraderie that you have through team sports, and being able to have a beer in the car park after the game is just as important as running around on the court now. So those friendships, as you say, that you build and you learn who people are, and when you go in the trenches with people, you learn a lot about them, and you learn a lot about the things that make them click, and being able to help them and support them throughout their journeys as well.
Wow, absolute stellar career, that's for sure. But you also got to represent your nation from 2001 through to 2008. Now, in 2022, you guys did really, really well at the Worlds. Tell us a little bit about that, how you shocked the world with, I think it was a 4th placing at the World Titles?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I was probably cut my career too short, finishing in 2008, and I carried on playing probably for another 10 years after that. But that was back in those days, and it still is the national team. You don't get paid to play on the national team, and when you're playing multiple leagues around the world, your body needs to have a rest somewhere. So I chose to retire quite early, but I go back, I have some of my fondest memories playing in that black singlet, being able to pull that on with your brothers and go to war against the rest of the world is pretty special. And, I was fortunate enough to do that in 2002, where we had an amazing team, and we went and shocked the world and ended up coming 4th. And anyone you'll speak to on that team is probably disappointed. We probably should have been playing for a gold medal in that tournament. We had Serbia on the ropes in the semi-final, and they ended up coming back and beating us, and a game we regret heavily. And then we didn't play well in our 3rd and 4th playoff against Germany and Dirk Nowitzki, and lost, and probably should have finished with a medal as well. And So it's disappointing. But then 2 years later, we got a chance to go to the Olympics as well with pretty much the same group, 1 or 2 players different. And again, we probably had a better team and we were probably more prepared. But when we went to the Olympics, we had so many narrow losses that we just couldn't quite win those games that we'd managed to win a couple of years earlier, and ended up only coming 10th at the Olympics, I think it was, in the end, and ended up playing the old foe Australia for 9th and 10th. And, you know, it was disappointing, although, you know, we were probably playing better basketball, but because we had caught people by surprise 2 years earlier, they'd prepared for us and they didn't underestimate us. Whereas I felt like at the World Cup, maybe they underestimated the ability of us, and we were able to, you know, knock people out of the time. Puerto Rico were undefeated at the tournament and we knocked them out at the time, and they'd just beaten the US team. So, you know, we had some big scalps at that tournament, but again, just going again to those world tournaments or Olympics with some of your good mates and being able to compete on the world stage is pretty special.
Very special indeed. Very special indeed. Well, after your playing career had finished, you took on a role as general manager for the Breakers, and obviously now hold that role as CEO of Basketball New Zealand. And as you mentioned earlier, recently you've jumped back in with the Breakers again. What was it that inspired you to step into these spaces to continue in the game?
Yeah, it's a really good question. At the end of my when I knew my career was coming to an end, the last few years, I sat down with the owner of the Breakers at the time, Paul Blackwell, and you know, he kind of said to me, "Look, where do you see yourself in the future? Do you see yourself coaching the Breakers one day, or do you see yourself going onto the business side and being the GM one day?" And to be honest, at the time, my heart was in coaching, and I really wanted to become a coach and start that coaching journey. But selfishly, I was like, but you know, I had a wife and 4 kids, and you know, coaching jobs are really hard because you've got to go to wherever the job is, and they're very transactional jobs. If you have a good season, you stay. If you don't, you get fired, and you've got to chase jobs all around the world. And you know, some of my good mates that I played with in that 2002 team are coaching in places like Japan and China, and you know, doing really well. But a lot of times they're living away from their families and sacrificing that family time to be able to go and coach and follow their dreams. And for me, I decided that, you know, I wanted a job that was more stable. I wanted to be able to pay my mortgage and not have to travel all around the world and be able to be there around my kids. And so I chose that pathway of going down the commercial side of it. So I started as the corporate sales manager, and then eventually moved into commercial manager, and then eventually into the GM of the club. And it all happened really quickly, which I'm very grateful for. And then after that, then stepped away from the Breakers and then stepped into the CEO role of Basketball New Zealand, which, you know, is the transition has been amazing. I was actually, I'm a trained travel agent of all things, and I've got a certificate in travel studies. I don't have a degree or a qualification that allows me to step into a CEO role. So I've been fortunate enough through my sport, I've managed to, I guess, climb up through the ranks through my work, and to be able to go into roles that I'm very grateful and humbled that people have selected me to go into those roles, to be able to, you know, help continue growing our sport. That's been so good to me.
Well, you're definitely helping within the sport you love, that's for sure, because basketball is one of the fastest growing sports in the world, I believe. Why do you think this is? What is it about basketball that's just attracting so many people?
I think I think basketball has so many elements to basketball. I think you know, it's got a real culture. It's not just a sport; it's got a culture behind it. Like, it's hip hop, it's fashion, it's shoes, it's, you know, it's athleticism, it's style, it's street. You know, it ticks a whole bunch of boxes that a lot of sports don't. And when you look at I certainly know in New Zealand, the demographic of New Zealand is changing. You know, we've got our Asian populations are far bigger than what they have been probably when we were growing up. And, you know, they love basketball. You know, the Asian communities love basketball. The Polynesian communities love basketball. Maori communities love basketball. So every community in New Zealand, basketball ticks those boxes for them. And it's a sport you can play from, you know, as soon as you can walk, right up to, you know, walking basketball. And then when you're not able-bodied, you can step into a wheelchair and play wheelchair basketball. So it's a sport that goes, you know, right across the age groups, right across the ethnicities. It's a very diverse game, and it's a sport that you can play also on your own. You just need a ball and a hoop, and you can go and have a go on your own. So I think it ticks a lot of boxes for the New Zealander. And probably the other thing that I would say when you're consuming basketball is the snackable size. You can put out a minute highlight reel of a game, and people can watch them in a minute. They can understand what happened in the game and show the key highlights, and then you can understand on your device how simple it is to know exactly what happened in a game in 1.5 minutes or a 1 minute footage.
Awesome. Well, you got me sold, mate. I'm going to go and get my basketball shoes on and head down to the Pungarehu court now.
Absolutely.
Hey, Dillon, thanks so much for taking the time out of your hectic, busy schedule with all that's going on at the moment to kōrero with us. You're a shining light in the game of basketball, and we appreciate the memories that you've shared with us and the work that you continue to do in the game. From all of us here in Taranaki, keep flying the flag proud for our little province, and we look forward to watching your growth in your new roles.
Thank you. Humbled that you've asked me to be on the show, and very proud to be from Taranaki and represent everything I do. So, once again, awesome chatting, and look forward to chatting again.